Okay. Well, YouTube says it's live, so I'm going to assume it is live. So I realize that this is about 4 months later than I expected it to be. What can I say? Life happened. Yeah, I had summer courses and other projects and just a bunch of stuff. So that this kind of fell by the wayside. But I am, as promised, going to be working on a ceiling tile texture. Now, I've done a bit of prep work just for the sake of brevity, and because half of the stuff I needed to do was reinstalling plugins on my computer, because I recently had it reimaged. So what I've done is I've pre-prepared this grid layout, which we're going to use for the ceiling tile. Just make sure that everything is, properly on the hammer grid, and also is going to be, symmetrical and tiled and whatnot. I'm going to also be using this, the Orange Box Seamless Texture Generator for just the final step, making sure it all tiles properly. There are other plugins which are paid for. This one's free and it just has a few license caveats that you have to keep in mind if you're doing a commercial project. But Aurelius is not a commercial project, so we don't have to really do anything. And I've just sourced a few things from CG Textures. Just a couple textures here that we're going to use as base images. So sorry, this is again freshly reimaged computer. It's not quite up to snuff yet. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab out a section of this, copy that, put it in here. Just going to make sure that this tiles. Maybe not the not always the best plugin, because there's that little visible ring, but I think we can make that work. And please excuse any misclicks. The mouse I'm using is a bit old. My good mouse is hooked up to my new desktop, which doesn't have Photoshop because I'm too cheap to buy a license. When I have the one specifically from my school that I can access. I really should get around to purchasing my own personal copy of Photoshop, but yeah, it's not on the priority list right now because I have to pay rent. What I'm gonna do is get a layer. I'm actually gonna just duplicate that and pop it up for top.
Bad news. Oh, wait, are you streaming?
Yeah.
Oh.
I muted it.
Oh. Also, wait. Did I hear your voice? Oh.
I think you did.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so bad news. We pay $87 this month plus
Why?
the late fee because they charged $100 already and they couldn't bring it down. They brought it down by $10 because they could, but that's about it.
Why did they charge us 100?
Because it's apparently not how the guy said. It's not like Wind where like you just keep the plan.
That's retarded.
It's a year long and then it just goes to the next closest plan.
That's retarded.
So yeah, so that. But good news is every month after this will be $70. So, well, it's pretty much the same amount. Just 90 cents less. Bad news is we get 20 up
Oh,
instead
shit.
of 100 up.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
I didn't. So, like I said, new computer, or re-image computer rather. Uh, I'm using a full-size microphone, but OBS is apparently sourcing from my built-in laptop microphone. So when I muted the microphone I thought I was using, you guys overheard some stuff about our internet provider being kind of derpy. I'm sure it's fine. It's probably not. And in the meantime, while I was talking with my roommate there, I realized... Shut the fuck up, Photoshop. Realized that I don't really need this to tile. Well, actually, maybe I do. Okay, I probably need that to tile. But... Okay, yeah, I need this to tile. Always like things you gotta work out with textures when you're working on them. So if I do that, what I'll do is I'll take that, pop it into another new one. Never actually used this on a non. Okay. Well, that's kind of disappointing. But I can work around it. If my computer will respond. Yeah, I'm not actually sure why it was necessary to refresh our computers, because these are school provided. But we didn't really get any new software, and if anything, well, I mean, we got Windows 10, I think we're running now. Or 8. We were running Windows 7 last year. But at the same time, we kind of didn't see any like performance gains. If anything, our computers are running slower than they were, which is... That's the calculator button. Which is right next to the delete button. You know, so if anything, we're worse off than we were, which is not exactly the best place to be. do this. Yeah, so it's tile seal. See, there's a bit of a ring in the center, but I'm sure you can iron that out after. There. And we just have to merge these layers. And we don't even really need to retile this one because there's going to be a middle seam over top that, which I'm going to be working on now. Reduce the opacity of that some more so we can see it. It's visible, but we're not going to be, it's not going to be staring us in the face. Okay. What I'm going to do actually is look up some reference images, because some offices have it where the ceiling tiles hang down through the bars. Actually, that might be something to consider doing. But others have it where it's on top. I just want to get a reference for the general color. So actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this image, pop it right into Photoshop, and then just find a midline image where there's no highlight or shadow. So about there. And we'll use that as our base color. Go here, just match one tool, on there. Then we can just paint bucket. And I made a mistake because I anti-aliased the selection. We don't want it anti-aliased. We actually don't want any tolerance either, because we want it to be exactly on the grid, which I haven't configured on this computer, but I did on my previous laptop where I made this image, because I was intending to do this 3 or 4 months ago. So I know that these measurements are correct, which means we gotta stick to them. I mean, we don't have to, it's not mandatory, but if we want it to tile nicely, we probably should stick to them. So I do that. So now I have a question I have to ask myself, which is, which way do I want the dominant parts of the stripping to be? Because you see in this reference image here, there's one strip above the other, and it looks like they're curved up. I'm not going to bother with that because it's a small detail no one will notice. But one runs above the other, one runs under. Aside from that, they're identical. So do I want that to be vertical top or horizontal top? And I think I want horizontal. Lighter color for the highlight. Really in a modern texture system, you probably wouldn't want to do this. You want it all in the height map or the normal map. But this is Source. It doesn't use physically based rendering. So we're going to go ahead and still use the old method of baking in lighting directly to the texture. Just little highlights on the edges, just to give us a sense of dimension. And then I'll just exaggerate that for the normal map, which we're going to be making in Photoshop. That's something I want to do for this texture, is have a normal map, and I'm not going to model something when there's no mesh involved. It's honestly, for something like this, you might as well just paint the normal map yourself. That's kind of weird there. Okay. Inverse end. Yeah, there's some alpha bleed there. Not something we want. So what I should do at this point is I should start grouping layers together. So put stucco in a layer. Delete that one, it's useless. I'll strip can go in here, asking these highlights. Actually, we're all going to put that in their own group, which is going to be called diffuse. And I just remembered that I don't have VTF edit installed. Which is a very essential tool if you're working in Source and making textures. You're going to want VTF edit, because it's a graphical interface that allows you to actually turn an image file into a format that the engine will accept. Associated with both. Don't need to be able to read me, I've read that 100 times. Alright. We'll just keep that open in the background. So now, just find the, oh yeah, that'd do it. Highlight is there. Actually, what I'm going to do is, this image is 1024 by 1024. Just going to add another slightly darker layer here, the edge, just so it's a little more visible than a single pixel. If this was a 512 by 512, I wouldn't bother. If it was a 2048 by 2048 texture, I would probably want to make it 4 pixels wide. Probably, I'm not sure. Don't really have to think about that. I'm not working on the 2048 texture. I could theoretically up the resolution. I'm sure Source would run it. But then when you're fitting it to geometry, you have to use like a ridiculously small texture scale. Like if you're using a 1024 by 1024 image, you have to scale it down to like 0.125 in Hammer for it to display the same as the default Half-Life 2 textures, which are all 512 by 512. So, you know, not quite something that you want to do. And oh, video output low. I do believe that we're not getting enough output through the Wi-Fi. So to those of you who are experiencing buffering, I apologize. Unfortunately, I cannot set up to Ethernet because this building was just not built with any Ethernet ports. It was built to be a fully Wi-Fi building, which is a terrible idea. I don't know why anyone in their right minds would think that that was acceptable. But, well, I say that. My experience with the company that owns this building is that they're not in their right minds. So they've gotten a bit better over time, but I don't think it's the fault of any one landlord. I think it's the company that owns the building rather than the people they hire to manage it. But this has just been horribly mismanaged over the years. The Wi-Fi thing is just one bad decision out of many. And even then, I'm sure it's suitable for the majority of people. I'm just the outlier, you know, the crazy guy who actually uses internet for things that aren't watching videos or pirating music. I'm under no illusions that, you know, students my age do that. Okay, so that was nice and easy. So now what I have to do is go through and eliminate some of these cross-sections. Basically, eliminate the horizontal stripes from this layer because it's now the vertical stripes. Pretty obvious. Yep. I'm sure there's a more efficient way to scroll through here. But I haven't been taught it. Wait a second. Oh wait, yeah, no. That's correct. That is correct. You can try to Lower zoom level. Yeah, that's enough accuracy. The only issue is that, when you're working with pixels, you want to make sure every pixel is accurately selected, especially if you're going to be like group deleting stuff. You don't want to misclick. What I'm probably going to do in the future, rather than using Photoshop on my school laptop, is going to figure out how to use Substance Designer, which is probably the best piece of software that any texture artist could pick up. And it's now free for students. If anyone watching is a student and wants to pick that up, it's a really handy tool. It's got a bunch of procedural generation stuff, and it's all set up for physically based rendering, which is, the system that Unreal and Unity use now, as well as like pretty much every AAA game. They're all using PBR, and most of them are using Substance to make the textures. Or rather, not just the textures, they're making the entire materials in there now. So now, that's a texture. It's workable, but it's a little bit flat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to the metal strip layer, I'm going to bring in this. Let's multiply it. Let's see, it adds, some detail. And of course, we don't want it on the stucco tiles. So I'm going to select not contiguous. Select the areas on my reference grid that are where the stucco goes and just delete that. So now we have multiplied onto the material a nice little metal noise texture that's sourced from an actual photograph, which really is about maybe not the best thing you can do, because photographs have, imperfections. They have highlights, and they have shadows, and they have, depending on your camera, a lot of visual noise on them that isn't actually present, but there are ways to mitigate that. And if you just using it as basically a noise map like I'm doing, it doesn't really matter. It's fine. So what I'm going to do, just to make sure everything is tiled, just run the tile generator through this. And see what we get. And what we get is, I don't know. Not sure what it says here. Actually, do this. Okay. So I'm going to come up with a better way of doing this. Because I just had flash inspiration. So what we're going to do first is image adjustments, levels. Now it's really sad. I should know where everything is, but I've forgotten because past few days before I got the Photoshop license working on the school computer, because it doesn't come pre-installed, you have to install it through their software deployment portal, as I've been using GIMP, which is I'm sure most of you have heard of GIMP. It's the free version of Photoshop, except the interface is entirely different. So I've gotten confused. I used to use GIMP. Now I prefer Photoshop because the interface is just better in general. There are a few things GIMP does that Photoshop doesn't. I've actually had to keep a copy of GIMP installed and handy for those features over the years. But I really prefer the interface of Photoshop over GIMP. What the hell is that? I don't know what's going on out there. What was I say? Oh yeah, GIMP. Anyway, but having to juggle between the two sometimes makes you a little confused. Especially if you've been using one for a long time, then you move to the other for a couple weeks and then go back to the other one. It's, you know, it's a thing. So this should be tiled now. Yeah, I can see a little. I mean, there's one way to find out. If we go to other offset and go 512, do you see any seams? The answer is no. Let's cancel that out. Okay, so that's one. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that. I'm going to use separate noise patterns for horizontal and vertical bars so that they don't look like they're part of the same metal pattern. And make sure that I have filtering on because I am resizing this a little bit. Just generally something you want to avoid, but if it's for a noise thing, you can usually get away with it. No one's gonna notice pixelation, especially once it's interpolated. Do that, and I'm just gonna a little screw on here. Let's spot heal that out. Doesn't make sense for a screw to be there. I'm going to play with the brightness and contrast too, just to make it a little more different, and then spot heal out some of these spots. I'm not sure how the algorithm for the spot healing brush works, but it's basically magic. Sometimes it makes huge errors, but most of the time it just averages out stuff really nicely. You see, you can't even see the brush strokes. It's good. So now that layer, that's fine. Tile that. So now we multiply that on, and we want to get rid of, helps if you're, oh, Well, yes, I should save that, actually. Finger slipped, let it go, Control D. But Control S is also a good option. Just delete that out of both of these. And the vertical noise should not be on the horizontal bars, and vice versa. I think Photoshop just jumped there, but you know what, that's fine. That actually helped. You know, like I said before, you want to be very careful with your selection. That's salvageable. Would not have been salvageable if I'd gone above that, though. Because once you delete something, it is gone. You can undo it, but once information is gone, it's gone. So you want to make sure that you either don't mess up or spot it right away so you can undo it. And sometimes you undo the wrong thing, which is why it's a good thing there's a redo option. Although Blender does not have that. And that's like the one flaw I can find with Blender. Well, I mean, I'm sure I could pick it apart and find a bunch of things wrong with the interface. Andrew Price, who was basically the guy who taught me Blender through his tutorials, he did a video once about a proposal to just completely redo and refine Blender's UI. So he found a bunch of things that could have been improved. So, you know, it's not perfect. But at the same time, it's... You know, you get what you pay for. So turn off vertical noise. Actually, no. No, I should rephrase that. You get more than you pay for because Blender's free. Unlike Maya, which is the thing. We were taught to use Maya for our program, as I've probably mentioned a whole bunch of times. That's the wrong layer. A whole bunch of times. I'm in a game development program. And what we use is Maya for school, because that's, you know, the industry standard modeling package. Now, the thing with Maya is that it's, you know, it's expensive. It's a couple $1,000s of expensive for a license, and you need a license per seat, per modeler. You know, unless you have an education deal or something. Or at least that used to be the case. They've gone on to a subscription-based model for Maya now. And now, you remember I said, you know, a couple $1,000s for a license. Now with the subscription model, it is a couple $1,000s for a couple years. It's $1,500 or so per year to use Maya now, which is just ridiculous if you ask me. That is way too... Oops. What did I do? Darken. Oh, okay. It's asking way too much money for a product if you expect like a small company to pay about $2,000 when you add in the tax. $2,000 a year per person to use the software. That's ridiculous price gouging right there. And they can get away with it because, you know, they're the industry standard. But that is just does not sit well with me, that policy. And, you know, maybe I'm biased because I use Blender, but you know what? I use Blender because that's what was available to me when I was in high school. Because it was free. I didn't have to save up my allowance because good luck finding a job when you live out in the middle of nowhere and you can't drive. You know, it was literally the only thing I could get. So I got it. Anyway, the big tangent has nothing to do with what we're doing now. So, you know, this is passable, I think. Could maybe, you know, adjust the layers on the stucco. It looks a little bit, you know, too... Yeah, but it's passable. But what we're going to do is more than passable. We don't want it to be passable. We want it to be good. So, this is the diffuse. We're not stopping at the diffuse because source is not gold source. It can do more than just a texture. So what we're going to do next is we're going to make the specular map. I'm just going to double check because I can't remember whether or not source uses helps so I spell it right. Not sure if source uses inverted specular masks or not, which is, you know, a good thing to know. Be a grayscale image in which entirely refractive areas are white and entirely black areas are matte. Okay, so it's not inverted, or it is inverted depending on what workflow you come from. But white is full specular, black is not specular at all, which is what we want. It's what we wanted to know. So we're going to put down base level specularity, which is none, because bulk of our material is not going to be reflective. Stucco is really not, you know, it's not shiny. Now that said, I am going to pop that in to five is probably too much. 5%. 2% is enough that it's not really visible to the human eye. You're definitely not going to see it through YouTube compression, but it'll be enough information, I think, for the engine to break it up just a little bit. And we're just going to bring in the strip base, image, desaturate that. And I think that might be, yeah, that's definitely, oh yeah, that's above half. That is too specular, because we don't want it to like reflect the level, we just want it to appear a little metallic. So we'll do about that. And if need be, we can, pretty sure there's a VTF flag for that you can modify the scale of the specularity. Let's duplicate the noise layers, pop them in here, put them in normal, both at 50, which is... Didn't intentionally put them at the same, but... Hey, whatever. So that, and then we just... Really won't lighten. That grid's bothering me. But I can't remember where I have to go to disable it, so I'm not going to bother. I'll just work around it for now and fix it later. Alright, so we got a bit of a texture to the specularity. But overall, it's, you know, standardized. There's no big splotches going through it. Just like, oh, there's a bunch of weird bits. No, we don't need that. If need be, I'll come back to the material and, you know, adjust it. Moving on, work on a height map. Now, Source doesn't use height maps, or rather, it kind of uses height maps. You can bring in a height map and use it as a bump map, but we don't want to use bump maps because screw that. Normal maps are better. Well, they're not inherently better. They're better for general use. Height maps and bump maps still have their places. But there's this really neat filter that NVIDIA's put out that just makes a normal map from a diffuse. And it is great. But first, we need to make some adjustments to this. I mean, we could just plop in the raw image, but that would be inadequate. That's so that the holes in the stucco, like the indent holes, are the furthest down. Copy these over. I'll have to do some further editing, of course. Oh, I should say vertical. Vertical highlights. So horizontal is on top. I misspelled strip. You know what? It's fine. I'm probably going to be the only one working on this PSD. So as long as I know what I mean, it's A-okay. I should go back later and, you know, fix the typos and whatnot, just in case. But now, some of you, a few, I actually don't know the statistics of like the average non-developer person and what they know. Some of you have probably heard of a normal map. Basically, what a normal is a per face vector, which it's essentially just a line that protrudes out from a face and says the face is pointing this direction. So if you have invert words. So I should probably get a drink soon. Anyway, as I was saying, as I'm trying to say, but failing. If you have inverted normals on your model, all the faces are going to be pointing in inwards, which means that on most engines, ooh, that's the wrong layer. Right, I was explaining something. Sorry, I got distracted. So most engines, if you have your normals inverted, the faces are going to all be pointing on the inside of the model, which means that they're not going to render. And you usually don't want that. Some engines you can flag the material to be like render both sides, and it'll render both sides. But basically the normal just tells the renderer, hey, for lighting, this is the direction I'm pointing. So what a normal map does is it, instead of having it per face on the model, it has it per pixel. So each pixel will have a color value that corresponds to a direction in X, Y, and Z for R, G, and B. And it'll just be, this is the direction that this pixel on the texture is pointing. So what that allows us to do is to simulate depth where there isn't depth, and basically make a flat surface appear more three-dimensional. I just screwed up, didn't I? I did. This is why I shouldn't multitask. Screw off, Windows. So when I multitask, I end up doing neither thing correctly. Because I'm sure if you look up the actual technical details of a normal map, my explanation probably has some errors in there. Okay, this is correct. But that is, essentially what a normal map does, if not exactly the technical details that you get from an engine programmer. Basically, the pixels say this is where the object's surface is facing, and then that's used for lighting calculations, which allows you to make things look 3D. And what a normal map does that's different from a height map or a bump map, which are the same thing used different ways, is that whereas a bump map only stores intensity, the normal map actually contains the directions. Did I say installs intensity? I think I did. I'm really not good at explaining things or just talking when I'm doing something else. The only reason I do at all is because otherwise it would be a very boring stream because everything would be quiet. And I don't want... I guess I don't mind making a fool of myself as long as it's for the sake of entertainment. That's the wrong layer. This is the thing. I'd rather you guys be entertained and, you know, actually have a reason to tune in rather than look smart. So I merge these. There. Those. Desaturate that. Desaturate that. Now the horizontal is on top, which means just the output to be greater. And yeah, I can't do adjustments on two layers, so I'm going to duplicate these, make those ones invisible, merge that, adjustments, levels, and just increase the contrast. Like so. And just decrease the white levels on the stucco. Like that. So you can see from here the depth of everything, which is, you know, what we're going for. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to duplicate these, merge them together, and run them through the NVIDIA filter. And change the alpha field. We want max RGB. These mostly, they're very small differences. 4x4 sample. 3x3, we don't want it to be filtered too much. Scale of 2 looks like it'll work. Just run it through 3D preview, which has not the best controls. But you can see, you know, it looks three-dimensional. And everything seems to be layered properly. So it's okay. And you can see a DirectX style normal map. Now, I don't know why, but apparently when they invented normal maps, both DirectX and OpenGL implemented them differently. So I think, if I'm remembering correctly, they're inverted from each other. So you'll have something that like pokes outwards in DirectX. And the same normal map, if you use an OpenGL, will go inwards unless you do some vector math in your renderer, like your rendering shader. I'm not entirely certain on that, so don't quote me on it. And I just realized I forgot a layer. Because a surface that has scratches on it should have scratches on it. So what I'm going to do is just adjust the levels, decrease the contrast on it. And we're just gonna decrease the opacity. So we want it to be subtle. We don't want giant bulges on the metal. In fact, I might, depending on how the normal map looks, I might just change my mind about that. So it's very subtle. You really don't notice it, but the engine will, because it views things through color values rather than through visuals. It's all numeric in the engine. Okay, so we have a normal map. We have a specular map. And we have a diffuse map, which is not very colorful, but I mean, it's ceiling tiles, they usually aren't. So I'm going to save out these different layers. My roommates are being loud. Or rather, one of my roommates and his friend. Okay, so yeah, I figured it wouldn't show up there. That's not the right folder. It's a different project I was toying around with. Alright, so there's a few things that we need to go over for the VTF options. Alpha format should be DTX1 because there's no transparency. So if we embed an alpha that has no information in it into the VTF, that's just wasting space. So we're going to save that as... Oh shoot, I don't know. Seal Stecco 01. And there's one thing I just remembered. Envmap mask will not work in model materials using bump map. In model materials. It's not for a model. So I should be able to use the maps separately. Okay, you can embed specular mask into the alpha channel, but it won't reduce memory usage. So we might as well use them separately. There's really, if there's no decrease in memory usage, it's really not worth it. I suppose maybe it would save a little bit on disk space. But I actually don't know if that's true or not. Oh, actually. Alright, in the animated texture, you usually want that because these two are special types. Animated texture is just a generic texture. You can import multiple frames at once, but if there's just one frame, it's going to be a standard texture. Yeah, so there's no option for I was just wondering if there was an option for a standard, not standard. That's Cowboy Bebop. I don't know if you guys can hear that from here. I really hope I don't get flagged for something that's out of my control. Anyway, but since it's just a monochrome image, I was just checking to see if there's an option in VTF Edit to only use a single channel, but there's not. Okay, so now we're importing a normal map, so we want it to be BGR888. I'm gonna leave that to actually. I believe there is a standard for that. Level design, 2D art. VTF compression formats must be carefully selected instead of chosen at random. Materials intended for use on brushwork surfaces, self-shadowing bump maps shall be used instead of normal maps. Now, I don't have a baker for that right now. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass that off to Michael Tannock, because he has a thing all set up for converting those. I just want to test it in game first. But yeah, the alpha format should be fine, and it's just going to be replaced anyway with a self-shadow bump map, which operates on the same principles, but is actually more efficient. And actually holds a little bit more information if you bake it directly, but you know, it's not something we have the capability to do on this machine, and not for something that we painted out entirely. Okay, so materials. This is it's not concrete. I guess plastic? No. Wolverine saving something. Plaster? Yeah, it might be plaster. Alright, so we need to explore the height map as well. So it can be turned into an SS bomb. I'm glad I checked the standards because I would have forgotten to do that. Alright, I'll put in plaster for now. It can be changed later. Because we're not going to be ready to actually texture maps for a while. Especially not the rate we're going. Recent places. Let's actually go into the folder we were in. Fire mask is specular. Options light map generic because it's brush. Surface 1. Probably. Default dirt flash grass gravel. I guess default's the one I want. Let's not bother with keywords right now. It's not translucent. That'll do for now. Yeah. Okay. Leave that open. Pop into hammer. Go into hammer, not rename it. I need a new mouse. At the same time, I don't have money to buy a new mouse because I literally just bought a new desktop, which I'm currently only using to keep an eye on the stream. So I search for ceiling stucco and 0.125. I forgot to set that. Uh-oh. That looks like a tiling error. Well, I mean, everyone will notice it now that I've pointed it out, but I'm sure no one will actually notice in game. They're going to be busy looking at other stuff. And the great thing about the grid I set up is that you can cleanly slice the texture, and even if you drop down your grid far enough, you want the super little details, slice out. Yeah, it's 1 unit geometry, so it's not the funnest thing to work with. But you can even slice out sections with which to have ceiling tiles be missing or otherwise displaced. Popping a light. Actually, it's not popping a light. It's popping a light spot because that's just overall better lighting. And we'll probably, me or someone else will probably get to that in a later stream when we're actually ready to light the maps, as to why spotlights are better than point lights. I should get a HTCT on this computer so I can compile maps properly. So it looks like the normal map is inverted. Well, yeah, no, it's inverted. I can fix that. That's no big deal. And yeah, actually, I think it's just because I'm streaming. I'm not getting any audio on my end either, but it's definitely the right impact. Wait, no, that's. I can't tell if this is plaster or I think that's concrete. That can be changed later. So one more thing I need to test. Plop in a cube map, recompile the map. Build cube maps, and then okay. So that's not actually as shiny as I wanted it to be. So there's a couple issues. That's fine. We can we can still work with that. Let's increase the specular map, or the environment map mask, as they call it in the source engine. Well, actually, that might be why also. Or it could not be. Actually, now I'm thinking about it. And seeing it, I think the difference between an OpenGL normal map and a DirectX normal map is probably just because they use a different handedness in their coordinate systems, which I know probably doesn't mean anything to the layperson, just because, you know, what the hell does that even mean? Well, basically there's an XYZ coordinate system, and depending on what's pointing which way, it I really cannot explain this in a satisfying manner. Basically, if you point your fingers out, index finger forward, middle finger to the side, and your thumb up, that's your coordinate system. If you do that on your other hand, that's the other coordinate system. So they're flipped. And it just kind of affects everything. OpenGL also does this really dumb thing by default if you don't tell it not to, where when you load in a texture, it'll actually load it in upside down, which is a big... I mean, every engine has fixed this by now. But if you're, making your own engine from scratch, it's a really big pain in the butt. if, say, your programmer decides that he has better things to do than to make textures load in the right side up. Because then all the artists have to remember to flip their stuff, and it's just... ugh. Okay, well, those are pockmarks. So the normal map is, doing the right thing now. I think it's sometimes hard to tell, but it's got a depth to it. I mean, you're not shining the light on it. It kind of looks like. I think I might have messed up. Well, no, it looks like pockmarks. That's correct, I think. I'll have to get a second opinion on it. Yeah, I did already build cube maps, right? Yeah. Specularity is still not where I want it to be. That's just a result of changing things while hammer's open. That's honestly fine. Not something to worry about. Increase that further. Save that. Import some places. Texture sample. There. I just want to double check the VMT. And map 1, mask is a specular. Yep. I'm just gonna check the surface properties. Concrete / rock, don't want that. Organic, manufactured. Main thing is plaster, or basically plaster. So I want to use plaster rather than default. Weird thing is I don't recall seeing that in the drop down for VTF edit. So I guess it's missing a few things, maybe. Oh. It's still not looking like metal. It's not metallic enough. And we might make specular reflections, yes. VTF valid per taxable reflection intensity, yeah. Grayscale image in which entirely reflective areas are white and entirely matte areas are black. It says model materials. I'm starting to think, ow, that I actually have to use it for the brush material, because it's not showing up whatsoever. So that, no, specular mask, image, adjustments, vert, copy. So when it's white, you can see the little details in the ceiling tile. Again, not, too intense, but it should be enough to actually do stuff. Channels, place into the mask, and that is yeah. So that should. Ooh, I remember having issues with this. They're too uncompressed. Remember the last time I tried to do this? I wasn't actually getting the DX5, yes please. The mask. Yeah. Alpha mask isn't working. You know what? We're not even going to be using the normal map. So what I'm just going to do, I'm going to comment out bump map. And just test the specular map. Yeah, I don't know what's up with this. If I get rid of the mask, does it do anything? So I've been at this for like an hour and a half now. total. Huh. Oh. Oops. That would probably do it. I thought it was a Boolean flag, not a string source. I was remembering that wrong, apparently. Okay, never mind. Because it's still not doing anything. I'm starting to think that maybe it's just the build of source has that broken or something. Oh, it's displaying a hammer now. I swear to God, if I had to restart hammer to get it to show up in engine, it'd be the stupidest thing. Survey says no. Survey also says that I should not be inverting this normal map. It's really weird though. This specular should be working. Why is that in favorites? I didn't set that. Okay, so let's place that. Open speculators. Yeah. Yeah, no, that should have some form of specular reflections on it. It's not entirely black. I'm just gonna check one thing. You think shader detail is high, texture detail. Go. Yeah, there's no video setting that would change that. I don't know. And there's also what looks like a very noticeable seam there. Huh. Well, I can't figure that out, but I think I've been working at this for long enough that I should probably commit my changes. Okay. Right, yeah, because this is the first material in the game. So the materials folder is not committed yet. Okay, so I'm going to have to send in, well, I commit all the source, but especially the height map. So Mike can turn that into a self-shadow bump map. And in a little while, after some research, I may actually go back and just completely redo this material entirely. But that is more or less how to create a material source in Photoshop. I'm not going to predict that I'm going to stream anytime soon, but hopefully I will, unlike last time.